Hello, hello, hello. Yes, my name's Alex Hort-Francis, and I work at University College London as a software engineer, which is a lot of fun, and I really like it actually. I've been there about 7 months, and I also help. I volunteer at Codebar in Norwich as a coach, and this is my first workshop, but something which I did. This project kind of comes from about a year ago when I was figuring out how to use the OpenAI API and sort of figuring what is the simplest web application you can make that sort of tests that you can use it. And it was quite a fun idea. And then so about a year later, I thought I would have a go at tidying up the project first of all and then sharing it. So I'll put it in the chat here. So you've got my GitHub repo. So I'm going to start sharing. Okie dokie. We're going to be making this slightly bizarre, interesting, exciting idea, which is a lemon poem generator. Now, this is currently hosted here, right? You can, if you go onto the Git repo, you will see this basically, right? Here it is in all its glory. Zoomed in, we've got a README, and all of the instructions are here. So purposefully, I've made this very accessible, very easy to access, very easy to kind of look at. And there's no secret notes that I've got on a screen that you can't see. It's all here. What I will literally be doing is just following along with this tutorial that's in this README here, right? Which might look a bit long, a bit scary, but it really isn't too bad. And the deployed version of this from this GitHub repo is here. So we know it works because I can refresh the page. And as you notice, every time a new poem about lemons. Why lemons? Well, why not lemons? That's what I say. So one thing before we start, rather than, I mean, you're very welcome to kind of in the comment if you get stuck, write something. What I probably won't do is I probably won't do kind of uh, troubleshooting from anyone's. If you want to code along, it's entirely optional. Daft if you don't want to. All the answers are here. So if I do something and you're doing it as well, and doesn't work for you, you could just look inside these files and figure out how it should look and literally paste it in. Copying and pasting is encouraged. One last thing, which is quite clever, which you can do if you'd like to, is if you come in here and on the README page and you literally copy raw file and go up to our good friend ChatGPT. You say, hello, I am following along a coding tutorial. I am stuck at the bit. Let's imagine the bit where he makes the poem. I don't know. Here is the notes. So you can literally come in here and just paste in literally everything. So you'll notice here that's now given this like chatbot window all the context, right? But it's quite long. Yeah, thank you. So if you get stuck, you've now got like an interactive resource if you need it. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Right. So let's crack on. So we're going to make this web application. It is a web application, very simple one. The idea here is that we all know ChatGPT. You know, ChatGPT. People use it in their jobs, in their personal lives, maybe your dating lives for advice. Who knows? I think what I find interesting about AI is that people think it's this chatbot, and yeah, this is one version of what you can do with it. It's not the only version by quite a long while. Once you understand how to use the OpenAI API, that will give you a bit of a hint that actually there's a lot more here to use to figure out, and you can just put the thinking power of this strange thing we've created, strange friendly thing, into any software that you've built. Now that's actually incredibly powerful and very exciting. The reason why we're doing this silly lemons thing is because it's kind of the simplest implementation, the simplementation, if you will, of how to put the thinking power of GPT-4, this large language model that's been trained on the internet, into some software that you have made yourself. That's not using someone else's software, you know, going to Microsoft or Google and using something that they've built. That's you want to make anything that you can think of, and you can just plug this thing into it. Very powerful. So let's crack on. There's some stuff here around Git. Git isn't totally compulsory for the project, but I do think anyone who's sort of serious about either getting a job in this industry or just doing projects that you can maintain and keep track of, Git is really worth doing. So we're going to go through some GitHub stuff here. There are some prerequisites that should have been shared beforehand. I think they were things that you'll need. So we're on GitHub right now. I believe to get onto this call via codebar, you need to get a GitHub account. Command line interface. So I'm using Bash, which is here. So Bash is just, a way of doing computers, but without having to use the user interface, right? VS Code, very useful. That's our code editor. There's a browser version, which is quite nice to use as well. It's a bit more, it's more sort of simplified, but it can be useful. Node is useful. It's the backend environment for running JavaScript. So JavaScript is the only programming language that works in the browser. If you want to run JavaScript out of the browser, you would probably use Node for that. And you can check that it's installed. Right now, let's do it. Let's go in. Node-B. Is it on there? Yes, it is. Good. And also, well, npm comes with Node, but it's how you get external libraries into your Node. An OpenAI account, and we're going to be getting an API key at some point, so that'll be useful. Right, so they're the prerequisites. Let's start. So first of all, this one here already exists, but we're gonna rebuild this from scratch. So let's make a new repo. And first of all, I've closed the page, which will got all the notes. So let's make a new repo in a new window. I can go back and forth. Literally, you come in here, and we're going to call it. Let's call it. The owner is me. Lemon poem generator live. How exciting! How exciting! That's about right. Good. And create that. And then we've now got this new repo, which is empty. You always see this when you get a new repo. It's giving you some advice about how to use it. Fantastic. So this is kind of like a folder, in effect, on GitHub that we can now use to store our code base, which is very handy, so we can back things up. So let's jump over to the terminal. In fact, I'm going to put this over here so I can keep an eye on it. So I'm in this workshops folder that's just in my file system, but we're going to make a new directory for this project. So mkdir make directory. It's good advice generally when doing this to use the same name as the repo on GitHub, because that will help you keep track of things. I don't think it will cause an error if you don't necessarily, but it's just a no-brainer really to do that if you can. So making a new directory, ls lists, we can now see we've got a new directory. Let's change directory, cd, into this new lemony directory. I've got a nice autocomplete, so I can press tab. Hey presto, we're now in here. Print working directory. You can see that we're now in this directory. Okay. This is a nice bit of bash scripting where we're literally just kind of going to use the command line to make a file. What echo does is it just runs some code and shows you what came out. And this is just adding this text to a new file called readme.md. .md is markdown. So if I run that, you should now see, if I press ls, we've got a new file called readme. What's in that file? Let's find out. Oh, it says lemon poem generator. Right, great. So now we've got a file that we can add to our first git commit. So we're going to go git init to initialize a new git project in this repo, which is now done. An empty git repository is now here. Git status. Brilliant. All right. So we can see here that we have got a new branch, main, no commits yet, but there's a file here, not tracked yet. So we're going to git add. The dot here is really important, by the way. Dot in the command line just means the current folder. So if I go git add dot, we're going to add everything in the current folder to our git environment, I suppose. So we can now commit it. This git stuff, by the way, for anyone who's never done git before, you might be totally baffled right now. For anyone who's done git before, you're probably bored out of your skull. Git is one of those things which you pick up quite quickly. It's not massively important to this project per se, but we're going to be committing as we go. And if you were to deploy it, you'd be using probably GitHub for that. So it kind of makes sense. That's why I put it in here in these notes when I made them. So git add, we're going to do our first commit. We've got our new file. Yep, that's on there. Git commit -m for message. And we're going to put initial commit, which is generally speaking the thing you want to put for your first commit. You always put that. Enter that. Fantastic. And then we're on main. That's good. So now we're going to go this bit here, by the way. If you just go to the new repo that you've got, it gives all this stuff here. So we've done that so far, haven't we? We've made a README. we've done git init, git add readme or git add dot for the whole folder, which is the same thing right now. We want to grab this bit of code here though, because we want to push this up. So we're going to set this Git repo that exists on GitHub as the origin remote for our local one. So pop that in there. Oops, that's the wrong one. Need to copy that. Put that in there. There we go. And then we're going to push. So we're going to push what we have so far in this Git repo, which is just one file, up to here. And all being well, that does indeed seem to work. So now if I come here and refresh this, we should have a README. Fantastic. We've now got a connection between our local computer and GitHub. That's brilliant. We can now back up our work very quickly. We can also deploy from GitHub if you want to, or share your work with the world. So that's kind of the first part. That's like setting up just very basic, like getting ourselves with a project, right? The next thing, which is a bit more exciting, is we're going to sort of come in here and we're going to, I might actually open up VS Code now, I think. Let's open up VS Code. So code space dot, again, dot for local directory. It's a bit nicer if you can sort of see what you're doing, I think, in VS Code. So currently then, I'll make it a bit bigger. We've just got this folder here, and it's just got one file, and that file is just this README, and it's got that text in it, right? We're gonna initialize a new npm project. So npm is Node Package Manager. It's the way that you install external software into your own project. Otherwise, you'd be making everything from scratch, which possibly fun, time consuming. So now that I've got this open here, you can sort of see how this changes. So the first thing with this is, let's clear out this npm init. You can just use the -y flag if you want to, but if you don't, what it would do, it would just ask you some questions, basically like what's the name of it. This doesn't really matter for what we're doing. We don't really need to know this. We can change it later. If you're making it into a package that other people might use as third-party software, this might be useful to think about. But for now, we can just happily click through that or enter through that. So now we've got our package.json, its configuration sort of file with just the name of it, right? So that's all that's done. It's literally just made a file, a .json file. .json, by the way, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's this form of structured data, very, very common. So we've now got a way for us to kind of add more packages. Let's do that. We're going to be using a few packages here. Express is a handy framework that allows you to make a server in Node in a more convenient way, right? .env allows you to save, well, how do you phrase it? Delicate credentials inside of a file which is hidden, essentially. So our API key from OpenAI, that needs to be hidden and secret and not released on the internet. So we're going to use .env for that. And OpenAI is the client library for OpenAI's API. So what that means is that OpenAI have their own server, and that's where the model exists, right? That's where like the AI lives. If we want to use that, the easiest way of doing that in our environment in Node is just to download the client module that OpenAI release and maintain. Very easy. You could also do a fetch request just through the internet if you want to, but I mean, this is easier. So we can come straight in here and we can just install these. Really cool. So we can just come in here and you can either do npm install or you can do npm I. I often just put npm I, to be honest with you. Same thing. And you can space separated list of whatever you want to install. So npm I express and .env and OpenAI. Give that a go. And we should hopefully, it'll be going off and fetching these through the internet. Fantastic. And now looking in our VS Code, we've now got this new Node modules folder. How cool is that? And all this new software has been just put into our computer, into our file system in this one folder for this one project. And we can now use it without having to make it ourselves. Pretty nifty. We're going to use NodeMon, sometimes pronounced NodeDemon. Exciting. That just stands for Node Monitor. and that is a development dependency. So it's just for us working on this as devs. Again, you could like put npm I. So the dash uppercase D flag specifies that is a development dependency. So all this does basically node mon is it means that when the server's running locally, if we want to change a file and save it, it will immediately update that and reset the server. Otherwise, we just have to kind of close the server down ourselves and restart it in the command line, which is doable, but it's just a bit annoying if you're doing a lot of work. So now we should have in our package.json, there's also this one here, it's our package lock, which just kind of gives you like more information about like exactly all of the dependencies. This, you'd be very, very rarely ever needing to look at this. It's really not for you, it's for computers. I wouldn't change it. Don't change it. Just leave it where it is. Package.json there, you can change and update. So again, now we've got some dependencies, .env, express, this is the version number, and label. If you want to know what this is, by the way, if you just literally go into Google npm, well, they're already here, npm express, right? If you're like, what is this crazy software? It's here, npm express. It is a fast, unopinionated, unlike me, minimalist web framework for Node. Very cool. And you can see like who works on it, and you can make sure it's legit because you can see that all these people are downloading it. So, you know, just like cigarettes, the more people that like it, it must be correct. Except this isn't cigarettes, this is good. Same thing with like OpenAI, you know, like npm OpenAI, we can find. So again, it's not secret, it's not confusing or miscellaneous. It's all here. They've even got a GitHub, so you can see like how it works. Now, without getting off topic, let's stay on track. So we've now installed this software. That's great. We would like now, this is very important. Please do remember this, right? We want to git ignore. Now, the reason why we want to git ignore is because when we push all of this code in our code base, in our project, up to GitHub, we do not want to be pushing to GitHub all of this code. No. All we want to push is just this one file. Because then, whenever our project is taken from GitHub, uploaded to a server, right? Somewhere else on the internet, could be like AWS, could be a server that you've got somewhere, wherever it is. Node can just run, can look in this package.json and go, oh, you want this software? Oh, I'll download it now. Rather than moving this. This is kind of like having a very thin USB as opposed to a massive USB that's carrying all this stuff that you're moving around place to place. So right now, I've got this handy extension in my VS Code called GitLens, I believe, by GitKraken. There is it, this one here, which is pretty handy actually. So I don't think you'll see these handy colored green sort of text and the U here out of the box with the VS Code. I believe it is something which GitLens gives you, but that's free. So my little recommendation here is actually get GitLens. It's really good and it's free. So you can see currently that these three things have changed, right? So if I go over to the terminal, and I just go git status, what's the status of Git as it sees things? It will tell me that we've got these untracked files. Package lock, yeah, so that's changed. Node modules. Well, I don't want Git to be looking at node modules. That's none of your beeswax. What we're going to do is we're going to add a git ignore, and that just tells Git what to ignore, which makes sense. Git ignore. You notice here, this file has not got a file name, only a file type. Quite interesting. Dot something. You often see that. Quite interesting. So we're going to put in here node mod. By the way, notice that I did this for the first time around saying it in the command line. That also works. That's fine, but you can just write it in here. Node underscore modules. You don't need to put a slash afterwards, but I often do, just make it obvious that it's a folder. And now, when I press save, you'll notice that's now grayed out. So now if I go over to the terminal, to my bash command line, do git status. Oops, say it again. Before, it said there was a new folder called node modules. Now, that's not being looked at, but there is now a new file called .gitignore. So we now know that the .gitignore is being read by Git, and it's now ignoring the node modules. Right? Hey presto, if I comment that out by pressing Command ? Or Control ? Save that, you can now see that it knows it's there, right? So we want to make sure that it knows not to be worrying about that. So, and then let's just make some of these files quickly. We're going to like really quickly, we can do it in the command line. We can come in here and be like, the command touch just sort of like interacts with a file in a non-specific way. It kind of like boops it. So if it already exists, it updates the last read property. Doesn't exist, it makes it. So if I go touch index.js, you'll see it makes it. Alternatively, you can just come in here, new file, and we're going to make also app.js. And then that was, I've done that before. Oh, and also this one here, yeah, this is quite useful. So in package.json, I would recommend, probably around here, we could put in type module, because that allows us to use, it's a bit technical, so I won't go into too much detail, but basically there's different syntaxes for importing and exporting chunks of code between files. There's CommonJS, which is a bit older and was originally used by Node. And there's ES6 import export syntax, which is a bit newer and used by React. But you can now use that in Node, and people tend to use that. If you're really interested, there's also a link. But honestly, it's so boring that even talking about this is making my eyes bleed. So let's make our basic server in app.js. Here comes copy and paste time. Again, like there are no secrets here. Like it's all here. We're going to make a very basic server. So what have we got here? We've got import express from express. So the express module, which happens to live inside. So we've said to npm that we want to use the external third-party library express. The code for this lives inside our node module. So if you look down here and look for express, you should be able to see it. Express. You've got all this stuff in here. If you're very interested, you can read how express works. What we're going to say from this software, from this third-party software that's currently installed in node modules, we want to import this, which happens to be a function, right? And then we're going to call that function with no arguments, and that's going to return a variable which is now called app. So app is now our app, right? Aptly named. Now, what we can now do, this is why this is worth using, is we can assign routes to our server application by just using the method .get off of the app object, which is very simple. You could do this in Node without using Express if you wanted to, but it's just a bit more verbose. So just this way. So we're going to say, what is the endpoint? In this case, it's the root route of the server. So it's like just the kind of server without any more, like, you know how here you've got github.com/. So this would be github.com with nothing after it. And we're going to send some text back. We export this object with this new route bound to it from this file. And then in index.js, which is, if you recall early on, eagle-eyed viewers might remember our entry point is index.js. We're going to just pop into here and we're going to like, oops, got the right stuff. Copy that in there. And again, so now it's like we're taking an app, kind of comes through here, gets given a route. I call it route because otherwise it's confusing. Export it, and we can now import that, can't we, from here? And then we can assign the port. The ports. When I was doing this, by the way, when I was running through this on Sunday, I was like, what is a port? So I decided that I might, at this point, show you how to use GitHub Copilot, which is really good. I've been using this at work non-stop, and it's been an absolute game changer. So as a very slight kind of side quest in our main quest, let's just, rather than me try and explain to you what I think a port is, what is a port in the context of this project? Because I would recommend that if you're trying to learn stuff, particularly, this is your best friend. It's about a tenner a month from GitHub, which isn't too bad. And it's the same sort of thing. So you can see here, I'm using ChatGPT again, but it's just happening inside your code base. So you can actually, it can see everything straight away. Very, very useful. And also you've got autocomplete. So if I kind of go a poem about lemons, it will probably guess what the next thing should be, right? Pretty handy. So a port is the endpoint. So it means, so how is a port different to a route? For example, you can come in here and you can learn stuff. So essentially, if we wanted to have multiple servers running on this computer, we could just have them on different ports. The default often for this sort of work is 3000. I think the way it described it earlier was that it was like, if you've got a big office block with multiple businesses, so your computer is the office block, and each business is like a process. Each business might have its own address or its own room number, is how it described it. Anyway, so that's fun. So I think we can now run this. Let's see if it works. Let's clear this first. npm run dev. It won't work. Brilliant. Because it's looking in here at scripts. So we want to add this. We want to add, did I put the log here? In our scripts property here. See, GitHub is kind of, Copilot is kind of guessing what we want handy. We're going to have one for dev, and it's going to be nodemon index.js, right? So now when I come over here, I run that again, it should hopefully work. Hey, so now to access this, localhost 3000 from my lovely new server. Oh, look at that, what a good thing. Let's enjoy that warm glow in our chests that computers works. This is now returning this locally from my machine. So it's made this server, this little, like when I say a server, I don't mean like hardware, I mean like a process, like a computer process. It's made this computer process server. It's running locally. It's served from this, and it returns whatever I wanted to return. So if I go in here and I change this to the to that, brilliant. AI is weird. We now get that. Hey, fantastic. All right, let's change that back. So I believe that's now time for a git commit. Yeah, fantastic. So come over here. On a Mac, it's Control C. On Windows, also Control C to close that process, right? And we're going to go git add dot current file. Sorry, current folder. I always do git status. I like looking at git status to make sure that you know what you're doing. So new file, git ignore. Yeah, that makes sense. A new file, app.js. That makes sense. Yep. We haven't got any modules in there. No, good, fantastic. Let's do git commit. -m, always use message. Very useful to keep a message, a description of what you've done in each commit. Make basic server. Done that, great. Git push. And now, all being well, this should now be up here. So that was it before, the repo, the remote for this local repo. Press refresh, and it's now all here. So that's brilliant. Right now, all this code, now we can back up our work as we go in a stress-free way. Fantastic. So currently, this isn't a very exciting server. I mean, it's quite exciting, but it's not, no lemons, no AI. Let's continue towards AI, which is now. So connecting to OpenAI, interesting. We're going to make a .env file. .env is just a kind of a file convention for keeping environmental variables, right? So you could do touch.env in your bash, but I've sort of think probably doing it in here is a bit easier. We also want to, so we want to ignore the .env, right? The reason for that is that we don't want to be pushing our API key up to GitHub, because then if you were to share this code publicly, which is probably worth doing if you're doing learning projects, your API key is going to be in the thing, which is really embarrassing. Believe me, it's embarrassing. And also people might rip you off and use your account. So, and we can check that it's not going to be put in the next commit because it's now grayed out here. And also if we go git status, right? So we can see that like we've modified that, but you can't see the new file .env. So now let's go over to OpenAI and let's get an API key. By the way, worth mentioning with OpenAI, the API developer account and the ChatGPT are two separate accounts. So you don't need to have a ChatGPT subscription if you want to use the OpenAI API, which is quite nice to know. And we're literally just going to kind of come in here and make a new secret key. So this you can various things here if you're doing like a proper app, but this doesn't matter really. We're just going to keep it simple. Going to call it something which makes sense. I'm going to call it the same name as the project and the repo. Lemon perm generator live. Now you won't be able to see this code, this API key once you've closed this, but that's fine. You can always delete it and generate it again. Copy that, and that's going to go into here, into env. Yep. Fantastic, right? And I know I nicked my API key. Thought the end was an A, wasn't it? Yeah. So what we want to do is use this key name, right, before it. .n files have a specific syntax. We're going to call ours, for argument's sake, OpenAI underscore API key. You can call it anything you want to, really, but that makes sense. The only reason why that matters is that you need to use the same name in your code. You'll notice here with IntelliSense, IntelliSense is the thing which VS Code does to show you that your code syntax is recognized. It knows that's the property and that's the actual API key, which is handy. And don't forget the equals. So let's go over to here. Let's make a new file to hold the logic, which is going to connect this server to OpenAI. I found that calling the services, calling the server services kind of works quite well. Make sure you don't get a space in here. It should just be the text. And OpenAI.js kind of makes sense. But again, you call it whatever you want to, really, in principle. Let's copy this bit of code over. No. Right, what is this scary code doing? So first of all, from the OpenAI external third-party code module that we imported via npm, which again, remember, it's just this code in here. If I scroll down, you can see OpenAI right there. From that, we want to import whatever this is. What is it? It's a class. Okay, cool. And then also from .env, import .env, which is probably also a object. We're going to run .env.config. That just sort of sets up the environmental variable, so we can use the API key in here. And then we're going to, this is all kind of object-oriented programming stuff, so we won't go into this in too much detail, but essentially what we're doing here is we're instantiating a live object which is going to hold all the different functions that we can do with the OpenAI client library. So for example, down here, we can do .chat.completions.create, right? And what that would do is it would just do a web request to OpenAI's server with whatever authentication they think is suitable, right? Because you've specified up here. Again, a lot of this stuff is like, you don't need to know how it works. You just kind of need to know like how to use it. If you want to know how it works, then you can come in here, you can ask our friends, or you could like really kind of dig around inside. If it opens up a little thing, sometimes you get a nice bit of IntelliSense. For example, like you come in here and you can sort of say, well, what things are available on here. But for now, like it doesn't really matter. Like this code works because I've been using it. So essentially, then we're going to get the API key. We're going to add that to the OpenAI client library code that's running on our server. We're going to make a function which is reusable and export it from this file. Export default this function, right? Notice, by the way, that whenever I hover over stuff, it's telling you very helpfully where that also appears in the code. So this function is going to be asynchronous because we are going to be making a web request, and it's going to have to await the results of that web request, right? If we were running a function which just did something on a local computer locally, it wouldn't need to be asynchronous, but we know the internet takes an amount of time to send a request and get the response back. And then in here, this stuff here is just, we can send some messages to the AI model, to GPT-4, 4o mini. And the content of the messages is going to be a parameter, which we can set in the function. Well, that's quite cool. So now we have this reusable function that we can just export from here. So again, like the implementation of this doesn't really matter. It's just how do we use it in a convenient way, right? So now let's go back over to app.js. And we're going to make a test endpoint, a test route to make sure this works. I would advise this for one reason in particular, which is that if you're making any kind of complex system, and if you're making software, you're really in the realm of systems design and maintenance. Rather than trying to do the whole thing at one go and then see if it works, you want to sort of do a little bit, test if it works, do a little bit more, test if it works. So right now, we've just added the code to try to call OpenAI, right? To call GPT-4. Does that work? Before I start worrying about making web pages, I want to make sure that works, right? So let's add this test route in first. And that might even help us in the future for debugging. If we make it more complex and something breaks, which bit's broken? Is it the API call? Maybe that could be handy later on. And again, like just make it really easy. The entire contents are here. So you can, if you get stuck, you'll notice here that my IntelliSense handily tells you which bits have changed since my last commit, right? Save that. npm run dev server, it's running. Now, you'll notice that at the route, right, here, we get this default get here, but we want this one. So how do we get there? We're literally just going to go test, and hopefully it's loading. So what is this? Well, the prompt is provide an amusing sentence, right? This is the same as if I go up here into ChatGPT and I say, provide an amusing sentence. Yeah. So very slightly different in terms of the way it's done it. Notice because there's a big system prompt in ChatGPT, right, which tells it how to behave. Now, when you use the API, that's not there. So you're working with the underlying model that powers the web service called ChatGPT, right? So using the API is a way for you to talk to the language model that's read the internet without the system message that is in this product, which makes it conform to behaviors that OpenAI want for their paid for service, right? That's quite important. And also, unless you turn off your conversation history for ChatGPT, OpenAI will train on your conversations. That's why they let you use it, so they can get more data. With the API, they don't, right? It's the whole point of the API is that it's for companies, for businesses who want to be able to use the capability of OpenAI's AI models without that data getting trained on, right? So if you look around the terms and conditions, you can confirm that. But essentially, this is now kind of a private hotline with the underlying model, which is why it's actually really exciting. So if I put something here, I can now put anything I want in here, right? What's a good one I did recently? Describe uh, a dog in a lovely way, and then refresh the page. So that this function now gets triggered, right? When we call this code with an HTTP GET request, which is all a browser does, right? The browser's default behavior is just whatever URL you put into here. When you press go, press enter, press refresh, it sends an HTTP GET request to whatever that is. That's picked up by our server here, and then it runs this code, and it uses our chat completion function, which we had. Remember, if I do command click, takes us there. Our chat completion function we made, the prompt, right? The prompt, the argument is just this text here, gets added to here and sent over. And then it takes about, I don't know, 5 seconds to go all the way to, well, I'm in Norwich, probably all the way to London, to probably a Microsoft Azure data center where they've spun up hundreds of thousands probably of instances of the underlying model that GPT-4 is. And that thing looks at your weird question and writes something out. So now if I press refresh, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, we get up. Oh, fantastic. I love AI. I just like it.
I love that. We've had a few people say that they're getting an error saying they have
Oh,
exceeded the current quota.
you want to put more credit onto your API key, I think. Yes, that was a common one actually in the past. I've had people say the same thing. If you go to usage up here, you can normally see like your bill. Maybe it's not usage, maybe it's something else. Probably it's going to be count. I probably shouldn't show you too much about my my own account on here. But essentially, yeah, if you get that message, very likely that you don't have enough credit on your account. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think they changed it. It used to be that they charge you at the end of each month, and now I think you have to put some money on at the start. I'm not sure. Yeah, it'll probably be maybe it's here, billing or usage or something. Here we go. So what? Here we go. Right. So it's here. It's this one. Settings, organization with a Z, billing overview, pay as you go, credit. I've got £8.40 or $8.40. It's cheap. If you put like I don't know $5 on here, that'll last you a long time. If you're just getting the occasional permabat dogs for fun, you want to go here and just check that you've got some money on here.
I guess for those who may not want to put any money, you can just follow along and watch
Yeah,
rather than,
yeah.
yeah, then rather than put money into your account.
I mean, it's pretty. We're talking like less than a cent for most API calls. So I kind of feel like it's quite accessible, but essentially, like, yeah, we are using this as a service, which is a service designed for applications, for software, for like products, that sort of thing, as opposed to like going on to like, say, the free version of this. So you're kind of paying per use, which can be cheaper sometimes depending on what you're doing. So that works. That's good. We could commit this, couldn't we? But I think we've seen how to commit stuff. That's fine. Let's move on to, we want to look at how to make a web page, because the end goal of this is to make this, right? This thing where it's not just showing it to you in this quite ugly way. It's stylish, right? So to do that, we're gonna make a public folder, and then in that public folder, we're gonna make the world's simplest web page. You will find that most HTML pages by default are called index.html. That is a standard, that's expected. Most web services will expect, they'll look for a file called index.html as the place to go by default on a server. So this file here, essentially, again, like, we're gonna copy and paste it, so it's not too mysterious. But what it's doing is it's just boilerplate. Boilerplate means code which you need, which isn't that exciting, but you need it to run, which just tells the computer what's happening. This stuff here, like, literally, it's just kind of like boilerplate. Fun stuff though. I mean, the title's on here, so we can see it's got this title when we make that. Or rather, you can see that it's got this title up here. Fun stuff is the Google fonts that I put in. So if you want to have like nice typography in your web projects, you can very easily do that with Google fonts. It's very easy to use, very cool. So you can come in here and you can sort of, if you go to get a font, it will give you some embed code. This stuff here, this is all stuff that is in this. I won't go through this right now, but that's the same stuff in here. You paste it in. So that's kind of cool. And there's some internal styling to make this look nice. Again, don't worry too much about how this looks. Ignore the fact that I put text line gold for some reason. I don't know why I put that. This is just making it kind of like in the middle of the page, making it look nice, giving it a nice gradient, etc., etc. Not that exciting. The actual HTML structure of this text. Again, like, if you want to have a look inside a web page, right click anywhere, inspect, right? We'll open up the dev tools in your browser. And we can see here that it's quite simple. It's got a body, it's got an H1, and it has this poem paragraph, which is where the poem will go. So this web page isn't that complicated. I'm pasting it in, and it's inside of index.html in public. Now, what we're going to do is, I think let's pop down a smidge first. Yeah, go over to app.js, and you're going to want to add in this line here. That just tells Express to use the public folder to serve that. You don't need this anymore. I think it won't. I'm not sure if it will actually, I don't think it will kind of error if it's not there, but we can get rid of it, so it's fine. So I think now we should have that serving straight away. You'll notice, by the way, that I haven't restarted the server with NodeMon. Didn't need to. Let's see if this works straight away. Hey, nice, excellent. All right, here we go. So now our web page is here. So if you look at this web page, right, it just says that. If I said about bread and then hit refresh, so we can see that we're able to change that straight away, right? About lemons. And then, so that's cool. What we want to do though is we want to have, yeah, so we've got rid of that, don't do that anymore. Yeah, we're going to get an endpoint to get the poem. So the idea here is that the user receives the web page straight away, then the web page goes and gets the poem, rather than having it sort of like, you notice here, if I refresh that, it does the request and it kind of hangs. It kind of works, but it's a bit, not the UX isn't amazing, is it? It hangs. Is it going to load? So instead, the web page loads straight away. That's not generated. And then once it loads, it then goes off and gets the poem. So to do that, okay, we're going to make a new endpoint. We're going to call it get poem, and it's here. So let's have a look at that endpoint. So it's going to be at that URI, I think it's called. That's the route. We're going to use the same function from before, the chat completion function, but we can pass in our own, our own prompt, right? Notice here that I'm just kind of like opening out these parentheses a little bit, which is fine with JavaScript. You can do that. It's okay. And then the only other thing that's quite interesting is that we're going to add this as JSON. So remember, like package.json up here, right? How it's got these curly braces. We're going to be returning the poem rather than just as text, like with here. It's going to be inside of a JSON object with a key of poem and the value being the poem. So let's see how that looks. So go over here. We're going to go get dash poem 1000, 2000. So now you can sort of see like it's been wrapped around. This is quite useful because the front end needs to be able to parse, P-A-R-S-E, parse the data in an expected way. If we can do that by wrapping it in a JSON object, that's going to make it a bit easier. So it's the same thing as this, but it's just the poem is in here. And also notice that GPT-4, the model outputs new lines with this /n delimiter. Interesting. You won't see that in ChatGPT because ChatGPT is formatting this for you. But again, like the raw output actually does have this in it. So we're going to use that in a bit to split this into 4 separate chunks to render it on the page. So that's all done. So now we want to add a bit of JavaScript to our web page. Here it is. Inside of a script tag. This could be at the top of the file, by the way, if you wanted to be with a defer attribute, but doesn't matter too much. We can put it down here. This is a bit more old-fashioned having the JavaScript at the bottom of the page. Doesn't matter too much. In here, we're going to run some code, right? So const. So we're going to make a variable called poem paragraph, and that is going to be assigned to whatever we find from. Hopefully, there'll be an element called with an ID of poem paragraph. So we've got a. In fact, I've got a feeling that I don't actually use this part. How did I do this last time? This is yeah, that's wrong. Oh well, it worked last time, so I'm sure it'll work. The main part is here though, so it's fetch. So fetch is just the browser's way of making a HTTP request. So you know how the browser itself makes an HTTP request. So you know what that is, by the way. I'll put it in here. HTTP request. That's just the main communication protocol for the internet or for the web, basically. If you want to get information or put information somewhere, you would use HTTP. Hypertext transfer protocol. Hypertext transfer protocol. If we want to do that in the browser without reloading the page, we can use this handy fetch function that's built into the browser, very simple. And if we don't specify like a brand new entire URL, HTTPS, blah, 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 whoops, like google.com, / get perm, then it will just assume that it's the current one. So it would assume it's whatever this is, right? Localhost in this case, or if it was GitHub, like github.com. So that's quite simple. And then we're going to wait for the response. We're going to convert that into data from the JSON. So we take that JSON and we're going to make it into a live object. And then we're going to take that and we're going to find the poem. So if you remember, we've got this poem key, the value of that, we're going to split that on this new line. And then for each of the 4, we'll get an array. An array is a list, right? We'll get an array of 4 lines. So we'll get that, we'll get that, we'll get that, and we'll get that, and they'll all be in an array, which is a data structure, which is just a list of things. And then we can, for each of those lines, again, I'm not going through this because I want to teach you how everything works. I'm just sort of like doing it quickly so you know how it roughly works, enough that it's not totally bamboozling. There's no expectation that you kind of know JavaScript by heart, or it's just how does it work roughly. We're going to, for every line, we'll do something. We're going to make a new span element on the page, which is just some text. We're going to set the content of that element to be the text here, right? And then we're going to append it to the page. That's it, basically. So how that works, if you were confused by that, you might want to come in here and like sort of say, explain how this works with lots of comments. I mean, I won't do that right now because I'm not an AI. you know, you can kind of see like how you might, if you wanted to really like deep dive into this, you can add that in if you were so so tempted. Right, so you could come in here, couldn't you, if you really wanted to? And anyway, but that isn't the point. This should now work. And we have the whole thing here again. So if you get stuck, it's all here. You can just copy that entire thing in. All right, if you get stuck. Let's have a look. Localhost 3000. Hey, here we go. Look. So now, whenever I refresh the page, I get a new poem. That's pretty cool. That's basically it. We're done. I could commit that if I wanted to, but I'm not going to, because that's not the exciting part using Git. What is exciting though is if I come over here and I change so in my get poem callback function here, if I change this prompt, let's keep it at 4 lines for now. What was it? Not about lemons, about bananas. Bananas. Save that, refresh that. Golden curves. Bananas. So you can sort of see here how you've now can make a poem about something else if you don't like lemons. Let's get rid of the hungry part before I change this. About dogs. About dogs. And the morning light, they bound and leave. Right, like write a short expressive poem about yourself. Oh, interesting. About yourself. There you go. Whispers. That's interesting. And then essentially like the way this kind of works, if I now go here and reload this, right, you'll see. Okay, it's too fast for me. Basically, if I refresh that, you'll see like it's made each of these spans per line, right? And then when I refresh the page, it's not there, and then it appears once the API call is done. If I wanted to be longer than 4 lines, that could probably work. Let's make it like 10 lines, and then it'll probably make 10 spans, I'm guessing. There you go. So you can sort of see how that works. That might sort of break on my... No, it's not too bad. It kind of works. That's pretty much it. The only other thing that I might very quickly before I open up to the questions, and also it's only like been an hour, that's a record time, is if you want to deploy this, so not just have it running locally. Right now, this is on our computer, right? It's on a local host, isn't it? Right? If we wanted to deploy this online for the world to see, as this version is, we might want to use a service like render.com. Quite a good option, you know. That would look like this. I've got the free version, which is why you'll notice it takes a bit of time to rebuild it from the Git repo. But all you're doing really is coming in here and you're kind of going here and you've got you can deploy this from your Git repo. So once you've you have committed this, so Git status, right? Git add. Yep, looks good. Git commit -m made the poem generator. Hooray! As our message, commit that. Oh, hello. Have I broken it? Whoops. Then push that up to GitHub. And that should now be in here. See, now that's a now. It's just happened. We could then come up to say render.com for argument's sake. There's loads of them. Vercel, I think probably as well. Come up to new web service, and you could like pluck it from your GitHub when this loads. So you see all of your various. So I come in here, wouldn't I? And I just do that. But I won't do that right now, unless people want me to. I think that it is now time to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Is there ways to
Cool.
add different data types than text?
Oh, so is that in the prompt itself or in the output?
In the prompt.
Oh, that's a good question. So it's a language model, so it needs to kind of consume text. So this is actually a really good question because this is kind of like cuts the heart of how you use AI. And this is why I like this project, because it's like, well, you're not just using the web service, you're kind of using the model. This is about context, right? It's about how do you provide context. So say for argument's sake, you had a database with those records. You couldn't just upload the raw database. What you'd have to do probably is create some kind of API that the model could use to get the right data, and that will probably be going in as text. So the software you build is going to be, say you want to build an AI app, right? That's probably going to be in relation to how the API works, which is why I want you to look at this, because it's like, well, if you want to like make your cool next software app, understanding this part of it suddenly unlocks stuff that you just couldn't do with software conventionally until this thing comes along. Now, saying that, you can also do image input. Oh, something quite fun to do as well is there is a way of doing image input into the API. I don't have a working code submit for that right now, but you can do it. I'm pretty sure the way you'd find out about that is you go to OpenAI, image input API, vision. Yeah, here we go. So you can find all the information you need on here, platform.openai.com, docs, guides, vision. And again, it's using the client. This is in Python. Could be in Node, could be in Python. You would, okay, so in this case, you could do it via the URL. And you just paste that in. But bear in mind that, yeah, it can do multimodal. The vision input on, again, like people aren't getting this, like the vision input of AI is so good. I think it's better than the part of your brain which looks at things. I think this thing is faster and often more accurate and more observant. But if you get stuck, for example, like imagine if you were doing this after this session or in the future, and like I suggested, you kind of had the resource, you could just come in here and copy this and paste it in, and you kind of have that as context. Paste all that in, right? And then you just shout, "I'm stuck," and then let's make a mistake. Let's make content equals lemon. Look, if I just do this as a screenshot, right? This is like groundbreaking, like seriously. Let's do just an entire screenshot of my VS Code and then drag that into ChatGPT. And I've just put the whole of the tutorial in there, paste that in with what I'm stuck. Would it figure it out? Let's have a look. I'll be very impressed if it does. OpenAI, this is a thermal name. Oh, hello. So look, it couldn't be easier, really, could it? At this point.
Mind
Very
blowing.
cool. Yeah, I know. This is actually really good. You won't be doing this if you're in GitHub Copilot because you can't. I don't think you can actually paste images into GitHub Copilot. You can actually. I don't know. Can you do that? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like if you're stuck, I often will do this with terminal output because I'll have a lot of output, and you'll notice that it can like quite easily read all that, which is a bit easier than copying and pasting it. So yes, so mainly text is your friends in terms of the input you're feeding into it. Generally speaking, how you process that text in a way which makes sense to it is going to be the logic, the business logic perhaps of whatever you're making, and that's going to be in relation to this. You can do images though. That's definitely worth considering. Things like audio. There's now the real-time audio API, which is the same thing as in the app. You've got the voice mode. That's the same thing as this, I believe. So I'd love to do a tutorial on this, a workshop on that in the future potentially. So you could probably put in audio that way and get audio back. But generally speaking, I kind of feel like text is the most useful approach. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Nice.
someone also did just ask, how do you manage complex responses from ChatGPT? And I think you did just touch upon it.
Complex responses. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to bear in mind here is right now what we're doing is we're getting the poem back as a poem. So if you go back to, where's our endpoint? Our test endpoint. Look host, return test. Oh, I've turned the server off. There you go. Oh, no. Oh, it's lemon. Yeah, look. Let's do that quickly. Look. If I was like, oh no, it's broken. What is all this crazy mad stuff? What does it mean? What does it mean? If I was like, oh no. It's going to look at this. I often find it quite hard to read the stuff, by the way, like output errors. It's not really human readable. You can see quite quickly it's going to be able to like read that and understand it. Thanks for the screenshot. Yeah, great. Let's turn that back to fix it before I answer your question. Over here. See here, you can see like I've changed that, and therefore I can come up here, I can reverse that. Quite handy. That should now work. Oh, we'll have to restart the server because it crashed. There you go. localhost 3000 test. Working. Where was that test endpoint? Hang on. Oh, here we go. Test. So you notice here. Oh no, so get poem, isn't it? In get poem, we notice here that we have wrapped this in this. Ignore the weird Zalgo text, by the way. I'm just having fun. We've wrapped it in JSON, right? Well, that's kind of interesting. But what if I wanted it to output structured data? Oh, interesting. So what if I said, rather than saying this, I might say something like, let's do it as a template literal, so we can, whoops, we can have multiple lines. Right. Let's say something like, give me an array of numbers between 1 and 10 as JSON JSON mode only, right? Again, yeah. Let's try that. See if it works. Okay, that's interesting. What if I tried that maybe in the test one instead? It's a bit easier. Let's do it in here. So you can see what I'm trying to demonstrate by doing this, which would be worth thinking about. So go over here. So now, right. Oh, that's the wrong one, isn't it? That's test. So how to do that? So it's kind of doing it like this. It's giving us these backticks, which is a markdown thing. So ChatGPT actually talks to you in markdown, right? Not in plain text. Fun fact, what is markdown? Spelled wrong. Markdown is this text format, which many of you might know already. If you look at how this thing here is done, the README in .md.markdown, the actual text itself has like hashtags at the start for headings, that kind of stuff. So ChatGPT actually communicates in Markdown. If I were to structure data out of it, right, I might do this, but I might do, for example, yeah, like that. That might just give it a little nudge. Yeah, here we go. Look, so now we have that. That's kind of interesting. So what if I did this, right? What if I said console.log the response, okay, console.log JSON.parse the response. Okay, that's interesting. So now in my terminal, I can log whatever I get from this. Will it work? Oh, no, it's going to crash. It's going to go not valid JSON. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. I think that should work. It worked a minute ago. There's a thing called JSON mode, which if you look at the documentation, they've given us. It's exact. Right, here we go. This is quite cool. Okay, so let's think about what's happened here. We've said this thing, which most people think is a chatbot, just outputs plain text. Doesn't output plain outputs markdown, right? We've said to it, we want JSON. JSON is a format of structured data, right? So JSON is this thing here. It's a format for storing and exchanging data, right? Not plain text, data. Data is that which can be parsed, P-A-R-S-E-D, parsed by a computer system to do things. It can be like evaluated against by logic, right? Okay, that's interesting. So JSON.parse, this code is run, right? So it's given me not just text, it's given me an array of numbers as structured data. Well, what about if I did that, the length of it, right? Console.log type of, oh yeah, the length could be quite good too. Is it an array? Yeah, okay. I want the length. So what I would do normally is I just sort of say, I want the length, please. And it'll kind of figure it out for me. Console.log, there you go. And you can delete that. So now, if I go over to here, let's refresh it again, see if it works this time. Okay, it might crash that time. It's not very consistent. So there's a JSON mode that they offer you, but it should hopefully work eventually if we keep doing it. Gets to where we go, right. Right, this is cool. So this is output from the model, right? Well, the prompt is asking for this output from the model. That output, the response, I was able to parse that in JavaScript and do things with it without encountering an error. So that output slotted into my software as code. I could parse it to being data that is happening at runtime and do various things. What is its type of? It's an object. Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. Is it an array? Yeah, it's an array. Yeah. How long is it? Oh, it's 10 things long. Well, that's interesting. So what if I go here and I go, was it response? If response dot what it includes 5, then I want to 5's in the array. Okay. Again, we're getting a few of these are hitting it. The way you would do this properly is you kind of use the JSON mode in the request, but for now we can kind of keep going until it works. Obviously you can see it does work sometimes, but it's just not as consistent as we want it. Okay, so look, that's interesting. So we can take the response from the language model and we can go, if something about that response we want to find out, then do something. So what if I put in here, give me an array. What if I try this? Important. If the word lemon contains the letter E, include 5 in the array. Otherwise, do not include 5 in the array. That's interesting. So now we're sort of using this thing to process some data. Right now that's hard coded, but I could have that coming in from a different system. See if this works. Might have to do this a few times. Definitely you want to use JSON mode for this. I'll show you that in a second. No, it's too helpful. It's trying to say, yes, of course, I'd love to do that. And it's hitting this error, isn't it? So it's putting these little backticks in it eventually should like, hang on. Do not include backticks. Yeah, okay, right, let's try that. There you go. Interesting. Okay. So now it sort of knows to do that. What if I say, you know, if the word lemon contains the letter Z, let's try that instead. We should hopefully get one without 5. Oh, it's gone. You're getting this, we're going with this. Kind of interesting. So what if this wasn't a hard-coded thing? What if I just had in here the query string? Let's just do it now. Can I have that now? Add the query string from the, will this work? Yeah, lovely. And then I go in here and I go prompt. In theory, God, will this work? Prompt live coding. Prompt equals dog. Will it will this work? Console.log prompt. Can we log that? Will it work? Dog. Yeah, that works. So now if the word dog contains, oh, where is it? If the word prompts contains letter Z, then let's get rid of all this nonsense. Give, right. If the word, whatever the word is, passing in there, contains letter Z, then output true. In fact, in that way, yeah, true is yeah. Otherwise, output false. Let's remove that. This bit here, that's going to break it, isn't it? So I'll have to do that. Let's get rid of that. I think that probably an example is quite helpful. So let's put that in there as well. For example, yeah, that's fine. So now let's try that. Result false. Well, what if I put a different thing like, let's get rid of that because I don't want to get confused about zebras. Right, let's put in the prompt as zebra. Should get true, shouldn't we? There you go, that's cool. Can you see where I'm going with this? So you can kind of like make something now. All I'm really doing here right now is I'm using this prompting to say, no, 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 as JSON, please. And that so far is not hitting an error. It's going through. What you might be inclined to do, they released something called JSON mode, which is specifically for this. Is this one structured outputs? I think this could be the new one. So this is what they've put into the API to ensure responses follow JSON's schema. So you won't get this kind of thing where it goes, hey, I'd love to help you with that. The answer is true at the start of it. You're like, no, 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 don't be friendly. Just do the thing. So you can see here, like the way that you might implement that is to have word, blah, 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 blah. Getting a structured response dot pass. Maybe it's that, I think. Maybe it's that one. Anyway, the idea is that they've given you a tool to allow it to adhere to JSON mode more reliably than just you asking it politely or insistently in this case. But basically, I have no idea what the original question was. I've gone off on a right tangent. Was this relevant to that question or not?
It
This is
was a
good though.
tangent, but it was
You should
good.
know this. It's really good. What was the question?
How to send complex data.
How to send complex data.
How to manage complex responses from ChatGPT was the
I
question.
think I've
Oh, you
kind of
did know?
covered that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you do it as
I
structured
like it.
data. So rather than it being, yeah, I think that's covered it. Because rather than it giving you some, this is what I wanted to do this whole workshop, because we're trying to move away from this idea, which people have, which isn't wrong in per se, but it's a bit sort of limited. The AI is for chatbots that you talk to. So you go, hello, hey fam, and it says, hey fam, hey, what's up? It's like, yeah, this is fun. But what I actually want as a software developer is I want something which can give me structured data back, which I can evaluate against in my custom software that I'm making that solves a real problem in my life or other people's lives that I like. And I can therefore use the thinking ability of this thing to do work in a way which doesn't involve me to kind of be sitting at a web browser all day copying and pasting stuff, but I can just write an automated process. And then it's like where you could just deploy the server to the internet, couldn't you? So rather than, this is what I'd like to see from anyone who's here who wants to kind of go a bit further on this project. What I want to see you do is to have a input on this right on this page. So rather than it just being a lemon poem, maybe it's like, what's the topic of your poem? You input that, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's like, I don't know, you have an input for an image. You can drag an image in to the web page, and then it looks at the image, and the prompt is, do you think this person is cool or not? Output only true or false. And so straight away you've got a are you cool generator, or like, there's all sorts of stuff you can do with it. The world's literally, the world is your oyster. Look, here's the oyster. This is your world.
Nice. We've had a few more questions come in. So what I might do is I might do some like quick fire questions.
Yes, please shut me up.
So that's okay. So how private is the prompt that you send? Can I hide things like private data,
question.
names, addresses, etc.?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So that I don't work for OpenAI. So, but basically, if you were to want to investigate further, what you would do is look at the API terms of use or privacy. If you decide with that, maybe this is the thing about OpenAI is that like they offer ChatGPT is this kind of trainable thing where you're kind of interacting with it, right? And it's like, well, unless you turn off your conversation history, which most people don't, it's kind of expected actually that like whatever you talk to this thing will probably end up being the training data for the next version of this thing, like GPT-5, whatever it is. The whole point about them having this enterprise API, it's an enterprise API, just to be clear. I know we had a bit of thing at the start about, well, it charges for you. Yeah, it does. It's an enterprise API. It's for companies, businesses, software applications, is that specifically they commit to. Now, maybe they're just lying. Maybe they want the data. They want your secrets. Maybe, I don't know. I don't work with these guys. If they're watching, hire me. But like realistically, if it were to come out that they were not doing this properly, whoever you are, you're not the person that will be suing them for the most money. So I kind of feel like for most needs and purposes, like this is designed specifically to be a private connection. I think they might retain the things you send them for like 7 days, just in case like the FBI asks for them or something like that, or so they can sort of check to make sure that like no one's using it to make explosives. But yeah, in essence, like it's designed very differently architecturally and legally to just using a chatbot. So for my purposes, like for me, I'd be like, that's good enough. I've got kind of what's the phrase? I've got the commitment, there you go, that this is a private connection. Does that answer your question?
It did, yeah.
Yeah,
Then the
okay.
next question is, would there be a way to store all the different poems that are generated?
Oh, lovely. Yeah, of course. I mean, you can have a database, couldn't you? What's happening here, though, right? Think about how it's working is the response is coming out of here, and we can send it on to the user, which you want to do, most likely, or do some fun stuff. Let's just, for argument's sake, say, create a text file named poems in the same and right. So if I'd say that and figure it out. No, okay, I can't. Maybe I'll have to import something else. Probably the import FS. Yeah, that makes sense. File system. And then probably, since all this work down here, it's thinking hard. Probably it's going to use FS file right like that. Let's give that a go. And then we're going to just comment all this out, and then we're going to comment that out as well. And instead, we're going to have a simple string of write me a short poem about a cat. What a lovely idea. Then hopefully this code should just do it. I'm not sure, but let's give it a go. Where is it? It's up here, isn't it? Oh, we're on, what was it? That's the endpoint for, that's the test endpoint. Okay, cool. Which is going to be here. Dun, 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 dun. Right, so that's our poem. Has it written that to a local? It has. There you go. So this is like the simplest implementation, where you just have a text file that you write to each time. I'm sure that if I refresh that, that would then change. Yeah, you can see it changes. So if you wanted that to be like multiple, you might have a database connection. So instead of that, you might have like an external service. If I was designing it with like a pen and paper on a whiteboard or something, or like a diagram, what I probably would do is just have a separate database. I'd probably go for something really simple. Like I could go for maybe Mongo is quite good. This sort of thing. It's NoSQL. So you might go here, for example, and you might make an account. I think you can actually do it for free. And then you could then most likely, you probably install a MongoDB third-party library via the same way that we've installed, all this stuff. Most probably, I don't know, I haven't used Mongo recently or with Node, I think. And then you could just have that in a database. And this is a cloud service, right? So it's just like very scalable, probably a free tier where you can kind of store poems, and you could then have that as a resource. I mean, that's probably how I'd be inclined to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And the last question, where do you suggest we go from here to further our skills with OpenAI?
Oh, so I think you should start with a project. Start with a thing you want to make. Like, what's the thing which you like? I mean, I like lemons. Do I like lemons? Maybe I do. Like I'm very into like projects-based learning, interest-based learning. As someone who had to learn how to be a developer over the course of about like a year and a half, non-stop. Very different to being at school or university, right? Because like the test is, well, do you know it? If you don't know it, you can't make anything. So you have to kind of figure out how to make stuff. And so you're constantly like being tested on, do you know it or not? Come up with a project, an idea. Like, what interests you? Do you think that there should be a app that allows you to take photographs of dogs and it comes up with a good name for that dog? If so, make that, right? In terms of like the learning, it's very easy now to kind of have access to this like personal tutor. The documentation for OpenAI is all in here. Now, you probably won't find this to be a very riveting read. It's a bit kind of chewy, but all the information is kind of here, right? So again, it's like, well, could I just like be lazy and like copy that, just put it into ChatGPT? Right. What does this mean? Maybe that's an approach. You could sort of do that. Oh, is that too much information? Yes, too long. Maybe kind of go through it and work with it. I would say like the reason why I quite like this as a project is it's quite small, quite manageable. So if you sort of if you're like, well, I'd really like something which perhaps uses the voice API, this real-time API. So how would you break that down to be a manageable thing where you kind of do several spikes? A spike in programming, by the way, is just this very handy thing to kind of think about when you're making stuff as a learner. A very small, the simplest possible program. So what I've made here is kind of a spike, or maybe it's more of a kind of a proof of concept. So maybe you're like, well, can I just have a MP3 that's already on my computer, and I send that to the model, and I get back it saying what it says. If you can get that one part to work, then you go, oh, that's cool, that works. Can I connect that to something else? Can I combine that? I mean, the information's on here, like it's on the documentation. That's going to be your best friend ultimately. Like, even though it is a bit kind of verbose, really you're going to be reading around here. Whenever you're confused by something, you can ask ChatGPT. I find that it's kind of got slightly woolly knowledge. I wouldn't recommend coming in here straight away and saying, how does your API work? Because it doesn't really know that well. It knows some stuff, but the exact implementation it won't know. So you're going to want to work from here, work from the fact that you've got all of the answers written down here. And then, yeah, come up with an idea for something, I think. And also YouTube has got so much great stuff. Like if I was on, I'd probably go on YouTube and I'd like to see what people are making, right? I'd be like something like OpenAI, see what my weird recommendations are. OpenAI API tutorial. Like there will be lots of people. If you look at these and they're within the last kind of last year, last few months, particularly, it's changed quite fast. Here's one here, right? That one's probably quite good. How to like a 7-minute guide. If it was me, probably what I would do is I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Can I follow along? Can I build that? Like if they're building it on YouTube, I can watch what they've done, kind of like me right now. Can I do that myself? And if not, where do I get stuck? When you get stuck, either if you have ChatGPT subscription, paste in the image, or you can come and do GitHub Copilot. That's how I would approach that. So that answers your question.
Nice. Perfect. I did see someone just raise their hand. So if that could be the last question.
Yeah, it was me. Sorry. I just
Perfect.
wanted to know if I'm assuming the answer is yes, but alongside the lemon poem, could you get it to output an image?
Ooh, yeah. So you'd use DALL-E for that. You notice with ChatGPT currently, it's got DALL-E built in. DALL-E is this. DALL-E because of Salvador Dali, obviously. It's the image generator. I use quite a lot of this actually. I use Midjourney as well. So if you say generate me, let's put please in case it takes over the world. Please generate me an image of a lemon. You'll notice what it's doing. Oh, it's generating. What's interesting here is like, well, if you're just a user, it's like, how does that work? I don't know how. Is it making it itself? What it's doing in practice, in principle, actually, is it's making an API call to the DALL-E 3 API, right? So that's how you would do that. So if you wanted to do that yourself, you want to use the DALL-E API, right? Image generation. Now back here, platform.openai.com docs guides images, which is all here. So generate an image, Node.js. So again, like you're going to be using the OpenAI, so the same client library as here, based on what that looks like. So it's going to be the same one as this, I believe. And then const response.data image URL. We may even be able to do this right now. Can I just do this right now? Can I just replace that with this? Let's give it a go. It's quite easy to be fair. And then I want to, I'll definitely log it. I'll try and returning it as well. Oops. And then it looks like the way that you're retrieving that is via a URL that's given you. So let's see if that works. So if I just call the endpoint here, that should give us a URL. Depending on, it's taking a while, which makes sense because it's a longer request to make the image takes longer than making some text. Oh, hello. Did that work? Image URL is not defined. Oh, that's Python. Const, sorry. Const image, no, that's right. Let's try that again. but essentially it's DALL-E. So OpenAI has multiple different models and services, one of them being DALL-E. So here we go. Right. So we've now got this. Is that going to be something I can just paste into my browser and look at? Oh, it is. Oh,
Amazing.
that's cool. Here we go. So that's interesting. So it's not sending you the image per se, it's sending you the URL of where the image is hosted. In theory, you can transmit images through the internet if you turn them into a what's it called? It's a 64 thing. How do you send images over HTTP? Base 64, isn't it? That's what I'm after. Base 64 encoded is how I've done that before, I think. So you kind of, you turn it into a binary. So you sort of turn it into a stream of binary characters, or base 64 encode it, yeah. So you can do that if you want to, but obviously what they've done here is they've just gone, well, we can just host it wherever it ends up here and then send you the URL. So in theory then, if I wanted to, I could like just have some code in my index HTML. I can imagine in my mind's eye something that looks kind of like this. Image, the source is going to be an empty string at the start, and then when you kind of come in here, imagine that was doing something differently, assuming that the endpoint we have, it's like a fetch, fetch image. In fact, you can probably figure out for us, fetch image, and then here you go. Look, so it's like, well, in this case, it's making the image, but maybe it could be get image, and then there you go. So document dot query selector, I probably would use. So we're going to get this image here, and then we can just set the URL. Sorry, this set the source property of this image tag to be the URL. So in theory, you could probably have quite quickly. You can make something where it's like a web page with an input, generate what you put in: a lemon, a cat, a sausage on holiday, and then it can generate that for you when it arrives. So
fantastic, thank
so
you.
answer your question.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Oh, perfect. I think that's a really nice way to end this workshop. Yes. So yeah, thank you so much, Alex. I think, I'm seeing lots of comments come in saying like this was amazing, that it's super interesting, that people can't wait to go and explore, the OpenAI API more. So yeah, and this was, exactly, the purpose of this workshop was to, be a nice introduction and, plant that seed of curiosity. So yeah, if you have any other ideas for any workshops like this in general, just drop me a message.
It's not confusing, it's not magic, it's not secrets, it's demystified, it's all here. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for coming and listening to me talk about lemons for an hour.